The last time I saw Serafina Moretti, she was wearing my ring and sobbing my name into a blood-soaked desert night. That was 5 years ago. 2 bullets in my chest. Marcus Hale standing over me with a smoking gun and a smile I still saw in my nightmares. The desert had swallowed me whole, and the world had moved on without me. My club, my name, my woman. Everything I built burned to ash. But I didn't die. I crawled. I survived. And I spent every day since then waiting for this moment. The Iron Viper's compound sat in the same valley it always had, but the insignia on the gate was wrong. Marcus's mark now, a snake coiled around a crown. My former vice president had taken everything. My throne. My patch. My life. But I wasn't here for him. Not yet. I was here for her. She was in the garden behind the main house when I saw her. Same dark hair, longer now, pulled back in a messy knot. Same curves beneath a simple sundress. She was on her knees in the dirt, hands buried in soil, planting flowers like she hadn't a care in the world. Like the ghost of her dead husband wasn't standing 50 feet away. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 5 years I'd imagined this reunion. 5 years of pain and rage and a love so stubborn it refused to die. And there she was, alive and beautiful, living in the house of the man who'd tried to murder me. I stepped out of the tree-line. She didn't hear me. She was humming, something soft and sad. A lullaby. The same one she used to hum when she couldn't sleep. Serafina. She froze. Her hands stopped moving in the dirt. Slowly, so slowly, she turned her head, and those dark eyes I'd memorized a lifetime ago locked onto mine. The color drained from her face. Dante. The word was barely a whisper. You're dead. I was. Now I'm not. She stood, stumbling backward, her hand flying to her chest. They said, Marcus said. Marcus Lid. I stepped closer, and she flinched. That flinch undid something inside me. He shot me twice and left me in the desert. But I didn't die, Sarah. I came back. For you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. It's been 5 years. I know. I mourned you. I buried you. Her voice broke. I moved on. I know that too. I clenched my fists. I know you married him. My vice president. My betrayer. The man who tried to kill me. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Before she could answer, a small voice called from the house. Mommy. Mommy, look. A boy burst through the back door, all gangly legs and boundless energy, clutching a crayon drawing. He was 4, maybe 5 years old. Jet black hair. Skin kissed by the sun. And eyes. Storm gray eyes that stared up at me with innocent curiosity. My eyes. The world stopped. I stared at the child who had my face, my hair, my eyes, and felt the ground splinter beneath my feet. Serafina made a strangled sound, reaching for him, pulling him against her skirt. Dante, she started, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. He's mine. Please. He's my son. The words came out as a growl, a prayer, a declaration of war. You had my child. And you let another man raise him. Marcus doesn't know. The confession burst out of her like a wound finally lanced. He thinks the baby came early. He thinks, God, Dante, I didn't have a choice. You were dead. I was alone. Marcus was all I had left. You had a choice. You chose him. I chose to survive. She was crying openly now, her arms wrapped around the boy who was staring up at us with wide, frightened eyes. I had a baby to protect. Your baby. And Marcus, whatever he did, he's been good to us. He's been a father to Luca. Luca. I tasted the name. My son's name. Given by a traitor. Mommy, who is that man? The boy's voice was small, scared. He was looking at me like I was a monster. Maybe I was. Serafina knelt down, cupping his face. Luca, baby, go inside. Find Mrs. Hart. Tell her mommy needs a minute. Okay. But, no. Please. He ran. The door slammed behind him. And then it was just us again, the woman I'd loved more than life and the ghost she'd buried 5 years ago. Dante, she whispered. What do you want? Everything. I closed the distance between us, and this time she didn't flinch. I cupped her jaw in my scarred hands, tilting her face up to mine. Her tears wet my fingers. I want my son. I want my club. I want the man who tried to kill me to pay for what he did. And I want you, back in my arms, back in my bed, back in my life. That's what I came back for. Marcus will kill you. Marcus already tried. He failed. I pressed my forehead to hers, breathing her in for the first time in 5 years. I'm not the same man he left in that desert, Sarah. I'm something worse. I'm a man with nothing left to lose. And I'm taking back everything that's mine. A door slammed in the distance. Marcus's voice, calling her name. She stiffened, fear flooding her eyes. Go, she breathed. Please. If he sees you. I'm not running. Not anymore. Dante, for Luca. If Marcus finds out the truth, he'll hurt him. Please. The boy. My son. The one thing that mattered more than revenge. I released her and stepped back into the tree-line, my eyes never leaving hers. This isn't over, Sarah. I'm coming back. For my son. For my club. And for you. I vanished into the trees just as Marcus rounded the corner, his arm sliding around Serafina's waist like he had any right to touch her. She looked at him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and I felt the monster inside me roar. 5 years of silence. 5 years of pain. 5 years of dreaming about this moment. The ghost was back, and he was ready to burn the world. I didn't leave. I should have. Every rational instinct screamed at me to retreat, regroup, return with a plan and an army. But the ghost of my own son's face held me rooted to the tree-line like a nail driven through my boots. Luca. My son. 4 years old, and I'd never held him. Never heard him laugh. Never taught him how to throw a punch or ride a bike or survive in a world that would try to break him. And Marcus, the man who'd put bullets in my chest, was teaching him those things instead. I watched the house from the ridge until the sun sank below the pines. Watched Marcus come and go, his arm always somewhere on Serafina. Her shoulder. Her waist. The small of her back. She moved like a woman who'd learned to endure touch rather than crave it. I knew the difference. I'd spent years learning every nuance of her body, and the stiff way she held herself now was a language I understood perfectly. She was surviving. Just like she'd said. When darkness finally swallowed the compound, I moved. The old safe house was exactly where I'd left it, a cabin buried in the national forest, accessible only by a fire road that hadn't seen gravel in a decade. I'd lived here for the last 6 months after returning to the state, rebuilding my strength, gathering intel, waiting for the right moment. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had killed me for this territory, and I'd been living in his backyard the whole time. The cabin was sparse. A wood stove. A wall covered in photographs and maps, the skeletal framework of my revenge. Marcus's patrol routes. His business associates. The weak points in the compound's security. I'd been preparing for a war, not for a son. I lit a lantern and stared at the map without seeing it. My hands were still shaking. 5 years of iron control, and one glimpse of a 4-year-old boy had shattered it. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. I had a gun in my hand before the second knock fell. Nobody knew about this cabin. Nobody alive, anyway. Ghost. The voice was old, cracked, familiar. It's me. Open up. I pulled the door open. A man stood on the threshold, 70 years old if he was a day, leathery skin, a silver beard, and one cloudy eye that had been blind since a knife fight in the 80s. Amos. My father's road captain. The only man who'd believed I was still alive. You're early, I said. You're late. He pushed past me into the cabin, settling into a chair with a grunt. I saw you on the ridge. You got close to the house. Too close. Someone could have spotted you. I saw her. I figured. He pulled a flask from his jacket. How is she? Married. Miserable. Scared. I paused. She has a son. Amos's hand froze halfway to his mouth. Marcus esse? Mine. Silence. Then a low whistle. 5 years. That's a hell of a secret to keep. She didn't have a choice. Marcus doesn't know. He thinks the boy is his. I braced my hands on the table. I have a son, Amos. A 4-year-old son who's been raised by the man who tried to kill me. What are you going to do? Take him back. Take her back. Burn Marcus's empire to ash and salt the earth behind me. I turned to face him. But I need time. I need to get close to her again. Close to the boy. Without Marcus knowing. Amos studied me with his one good eye. You're asking for a miracle. I'm asking for a way in. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. The compound is hiring. Maintenance staff. Groundskeepers. Marcus has been expanding. He's got more money than sense these days, and he needs bodies. He slid the paper across the table. You'd have to change your appearance. Cut the hair. Ditch the attitude. You're a ghost, not a ghost story. You want me to apply for a job at my own compound? I want you to get close to your son without getting a bullet in your skull. This is the way. Amos stood. You've waited 5 years, ghost. Wait a few more weeks. Do this right. He left me with the paper and the lantern and the photograph of Serafina I'd carried in my pocket for 5 years. The edges were worn soft, the image faded, but I could still see her smile. The smile she'd given me the night before Marcus shot me. The smile I hadn't seen on her face today. I picked up the paper. Maintenance staff. Groundskeepers. Away inside. The next morning, I shaved my beard. Cut my hair short. Traded my leather for work boots and a plain gray shirt. I practiced a new name, Daniel Cross, and memorized the backstory Amos had prepared. A drifter. A veteran. A man with nothing to lose. The interview was held in a trailer outside the compound gates. A bored-looking manager asked 3 questions and barely listened to the answers. By noon, I had a job. By evening, I was inside. The ground stretched between the main house and the clubhouse, a manicured lawn bordered by flower beds and gravel paths. I was assigned to the garden crew, pruning hedges, pulling weeds, hauling mulch. Grunt work. Invisible work. Perfect. On my second day, I saw him. Luca was in the garden, chasing butterflies with a net twice his size. He was laughing, his dark hair flopping into his eyes, his small feet kicking up clouds of dirt. He was beautiful. He was mine. And I was 10 feet away, kneeling in the soil, invisible. Be careful, Luca. Serafina called from the porch. She was watching him with a smile that almost reached her eyes. Almost. Then Luca tripped. He sprawled face first into the dirt, and the laughter turned to wails. I moved before I could stop myself, crossing the lawn, kneeling beside him, lifting him gently to his feet. You're okay, buddy, I said, brushing dirt from his knees. Just a tumble. You're tougher than that, right? He sniffled, staring up at me with those storm-gray eyes. I'm tough, he whispered. I know you are. Footsteps pounded across the grass. Serafina was running toward us, her face pale with terror. When she saw me holding Luca, saw my face, my eyes, the truth I couldn't hide, she stopped dead. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely steady. "For helping him." "Just doing my job, ma'am." Luca looked between us, confused. "Mommy, do you know him?" "No, baby." She reached for him, pulling him away from me. Her eyes never left mine. "No, I don't." She backed toward the house, Luca in her arms, her gaze full of warning. "Stay away. Don't say a word. You'll destroy everything." But as she turned to go, her hand brushed mine, just for a second. And in that second, I felt her shake. Not with fear. With something else. Something she'd buried 5 years ago and never expected to feel again. 3 days. I'd been inside the compound for 3 days, and every hour was a new kind of torture. I watched Serafina from a distance. Watched her hang laundry on the line behind the house. Watched her push Luca on the swing set Marcus had built, the traitor playing father to my son. Watched her smile that hollow smile every time Marcus came home, pressing a kiss to his cheek like a wife who hadn't buried her real husband in a desert grave. She knew I was here now. She'd seen my face in the garden, watched me lift our son from the dirt. She hadn't told Marcus. I knew because I was still breathing. But the fear in her eyes every time she passed me in the yard was a warning I refused to heed. On the 4th night, the compound threw a party. Marcus was celebrating a territory expansion. New shipping routes, new revenue, new power he'd stolen from my ghost. The clubhouse throbbed with music and smoke, the Iron Viper's new insignia hanging over the bar like a taunt. I was supposed to be cleaning the garden beds, but I drifted closer to the house, drawn by the sound of Luca's laughter filtering through an open window. I found him in the kitchen with a babysitter, Mrs. Hart, an older woman who'd worked for the club since my father's time. She was teaching him to roll cookie dough, his small hands covered in flour. He was laughing, really laughing, the sound pure and bright. I stood in the shadows outside the window, watching, learning him. The way he bit his lip when he concentrated. The way his gray eyes crinkled when he smiled. My mother's eyes. My son. "He's beautiful, isn't he?" Serafina's voice came from behind me, soft as a ghost. I didn't turn around. "He's perfect. You shouldn't be here. If Marcus sees you this close to the house. He's at the party, drinking his victory, surrounded by men who don't know they're following a murderer." I finally turned. She was wearing a blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked exactly like the woman I'd left behind 5 years ago, and nothing like her at all. "I'm not going to hurt you, Sarah. You already are." Her voice cracked. "Every time I look at you, I remember everything. The desert. The funeral. The years I spent trying to forget you. Did you forget me?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The way she was looking at me, with terror and longing and something that looked a lot like hope, was answer enough. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. "I buried you. I wore black for a year. I almost—" She stopped, pressing a hand to her mouth. "I almost followed you. I wanted to die, Dante. And Marcus was there. He was kind. He told me you would have wanted me to move on." Marcus Lied. I know that now. I stepped closer, and this time she didn't flinch. I could smell her perfume, the same jasmine she'd worn since we were teenagers. It undid me. "He's been good to Luca," she said, her voice barely audible. "Whatever he did to you, he's been a father to that boy. He's not his father, biologically. But Luca doesn't know that. He loves Marcus. He calls him Daddy." The word hit me like a bullet. I grabbed the porch railing, my knuckles white. "He's mine. He's yours. But if you take him, if you tear him away from the only father he's ever known, you'll break his heart." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Is that what you want? I want my family back. You can't just—" The back door swung open. Marcus stepped onto the porch, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his cold eyes narrowing when he saw us. Serafina went rigid. I dropped my gaze to the ground, becoming the invisible groundskeeper again. "Who's this?" Marcus asked, his voice deceptively casual. "The new gardener," Serafina said quickly. I was telling him about the rose beds. They need pruning." Marcus studied me for a long moment. I kept my head down, my shoulders slouched, my face partially shadowed. 5 years had changed me. Scars, gray hair, a leaner frame, but up close, the resemblance was still there. If he looked too hard, he'd see it. "What's your name?" "Daniel Cross, sir." "Daniel." He rolled the name around like it tasted wrong. "You look familiar. Have we met?" "I don't think so, sir. I've been drifting for a while. Lot of towns. HM." He turned to Serafina. "Come inside. The guests are asking about you." She nodded, already moving toward the door. But as she passed me, her fingers brushed mine, just for a heartbeat. I felt the tremor in them, the fear, the apology, the love she'd buried but never killed. Marcus held the door for her, then paused, his eyes flicking back to me one last time. "Stay away from the main house, Daniel. The garden crew works the perimeter. Understood?" "Understood, sir." The door slammed. Through the window, I watched him pull Serafina into the party, his hand low on her back. She glanced over her shoulder once, her dark eyes finding mine through the glass. Then she was gone. I stood on the porch, the music pounding through the walls, and felt the monster inside me roar. Marcus had taken everything. My club, my wife, my son. He'd given Luca his name, his home, his love. And now he was throwing parties in my house while I pruned his roses. Not for much longer. I melted back into the shadows, but I didn't go far. The party raged until dawn, and when the last guest stumbled out, I was still there. Waiting. Watching. Planning. The ghost wasn't done yet. He was just getting started. The safe house felt smaller now. I sat at the table, a single lantern burning, staring at the wall of photographs and maps I'd spent months assembling. Marcus's patrol routes. His supply chains. His allies. It was all there, the blueprint for his destruction. But now there was a new face on the wall. A sketch I'd drawn from memory, crude but accurate. Luca. My son. His face pinned next to Serafina's photograph, the two of them a constellation I couldn't stop orbiting. Amos returned on the 5th night, bringing supplies and news. "Marcus is planning something big," he said, settling into his usual chair. "A deal with the cartel." "Santiago Reyes. You remember him?" "I remember everyone." Santiago Reyes had been a minor player when I was president. Ambitious, dangerous, exactly the kind of ally Marcus would seek. "When?" 3 weeks. The compound is hosting negotiations. Heavy security. Lots of witnesses. Amos paused. "If you want to expose Marcus, that's your window." "Expose him for what?" "Nobody knows I'm alive. His crimes are buried with my supposed corpse. Then maybe it's time to stop being a ghost." Amos leaned forward. "You've been back for weeks. You've seen your son. You've talked to Serafina. But you're still hiding in the shadows, pruning hedges, pretending to be someone else. When are you going to step into the light?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know how. Every time I imagined confronting Marcus, I saw Luca's face. The boy who called another man daddy. The boy whose world I would shatter. I need to talk to her, I said. Alone. Without Marcus. That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. Amos studied me with his one good eye. Then he pulled a folded note from his jacket. She beat me to it. Found me in town yesterday. She wants to meet you. Tomorrow night. The old chapel on the ridge. The chapel. I remembered it, a crumbling stone ruin where Serafina and I had stolen our first kiss as teenagers. She'd chosen it deliberately. A message wrapped in a location. Trattino trattino. The moon was high when I reached the chapel. The roof had collapsed decades ago, but the stone walls still stood, and wildflowers had overtaken the floor. Serafina was sitting on the old stone altar, her knees drawn up, her dark hair silvered by moonlight. "You came," she whispered. "You knew I would." She slid off the altar and stood, her arms wrapped around herself. "I need you to understand something. About Marcus. About why I stayed. I know why. You were alone. Pregnant. Terrified. You don't know the half of it." She took a shaky breath. "After you died, after I thought you died, Marcus was the only one who came for me. The club fell apart. Your allies scattered. I had nothing. No money. No family. A baby on the way. Marcus gave me a home. He gave Luca a name. He gave himself an alibi. The grieving widow marrying the loyal vice president? It's a perfect cover. I know." Her voice cracked. "I know what he did. But for 5 years I've been trapped in this lie. If I leave him, he'll take Luca. He has the money, the power, the legal system. I'm nothing. I'm just a woman who made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. You survived." I crossed the chapel and took her hands. "I'm not here to punish you, Sarah. I'm here to free you." "How?" "The cartel deal. 3 weeks from now. It's the perfect moment to expose him. His crimes, his lies, the truth about what he did to me. But I need your help. I need access to his office. His files. Proof of the embezzlement he's been running under the cartel's nose. He keeps everything in a safe behind his desk. I know the combination." She looked up at me, her dark eyes fierce. "If I give it to you, if I help you, you have to promise me something. Anything. You don't hurt Luca. Whatever happens between you and Marcus, whatever revenge you need, Luca doesn't see it. He doesn't lose his father. I am his father. You know what I mean." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "He's 4 years old, Dante. He loves Marcus. He calls him Daddy. If you take that away, if you destroy Marcus in front of him, you'll break something in him that can't be fixed." The words hit me like a fist. She was right. God help me, she was right. My son had been raised by a monster, but he didn't know that. He just knew the man who tucked him in at night. "I won't hurt him," I said. "I swear it." "And Marcus? Are you going to kill him?" I was silent for a long moment. "He tried to kill me. He stole my club, my name, my family. He's been sleeping next to my wife for 5 years, raising my son like he earned it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." She pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself again. "Then I can't help you. I won't trade one monster for another." The word hit me like a bullet. Monster. She thought I was a monster. After everything, the desert, the survival, the 5 years of clawing my way back, I was just another threat to her family. "I'm not Marcus," I said quietly. "Then prove it." She stepped closer, her hand pressing flat against my chest. "Prove that the man I loved is still in there. The man who held me when my mother died. The man who promised me forever. I mourned him, Dante. I buried him. If there's anything left of him, please, show me." I covered her hand with mine. Her pulse fluttered under my palm, rapid and fragile. He's still here, buried under 5 years of rage. But he's here. Then help me. Don't just destroy Marcus. Expose him. Let the law take him. Let the club see what he really is. That's justice, not murder. And if justice fails, then we run. Her eyes held mine. You, me, and Luca. We disappear. We start over. But we do it without blood on your hands. I stared at her. The woman I'd loved since we were teenagers. The woman who'd buried me and married my enemy. The woman who was offering me a way back, not just to her, but to myself. 3 weeks, I said. The cartel deal. I'll expose him in front of everyone. His allies. His men. The truth about what he did. And if it works, then I get my life back. My name. My son. I cupped her face in my hands. And you. If you'll have me. She kissed me. Not the desperate, grieving kiss of our last night together, but something quieter. Hopeful. A promise. When we broke apart, she was trembling. I have to go. If I'm gone too long. I know. I pressed my forehead to hers. 3 weeks. Stay strong. You too. She slipped out of the chapel and vanished into the trees. I stood alone in the ruins, the moonlight pooling on the stone floor, and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. The ghost was done hiding. It was time to rise. The night of the cartel deal arrived wrapped in fog and silence. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing. Files copied from Marcus's safe. Witness statements from old vipers who'd suspected the truth. A recorded confession from an associate who'd helped stage my death. Serafina had Luca tucked away with Mrs. Hart, or so I thought. Nothing could go wrong. I slipped through the service entrance. The main hall was packed. Cartel soldiers, vipers in their cuts, Marcus at the head of the table with whiskey and a smile that made my blood boil. I wore my original cut for the first time in 5 years, the faded reaper patch still stitched across my back. "You're sure about this?" Amos muttered. "I've never been more sure." I pushed through the doors. The room went silent. Marcus's glass stopped halfway to his lips. For one eternal moment, the entire clubhouse stared at a dead man walking. "Evening, gentlemen." My voice carried like a gunshot. "Sorry I'm late." Marcus rose slowly, color draining from his face. "You're dead." I got better. I turned to the cartel representative. "I'm Dante Moretti, the man who should be sitting in that chair. And I have proof that Marcus Hale shot me, stole my club, and has been embezzling from you for years." I tossed the folder onto the table. Photographs spilled out. Documents. The confession. The cartel man, Vargas, scanned the papers. His expression went cold. "These numbers are accurate? Every cent." Marcus lunged, but his own men grabbed his arms. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You took my wife. You raised my son. You thought I'd stay dead?" His eyes went wild. "Your son?" He laughed, high and hysterical. "You think I didn't know?" The world stopped. "You think I believed that baby was mine?" Those eyes. Your eyes. Every time I looked at him, I saw you. He wrenched free of his captors, his face twisted with triumph. "I raised him anyway. I made him love me. He calls me Daddy. And you'll never take that back." Before I could move, a gun appeared in his hand. He didn't aim at me. He aimed at the door. Serafina stood frozen in the threshold, her face white. And beside her, clutching her hand with wide, terrified gray eyes, was Luca. "I told you to stay away," I breathed. Luca wanted his father, Marcus called mockingly. "Isn't that right, son? Come here, boy." Dad. Luca looked at Marcus, then at me, his small face crumpling. Who is that man? Marcus crouched, opening his arms, the gun still in his hand. Come to Daddy, Luca. No. Luca took a step. Serafina screamed. I lunged, but Marcus's gun swung toward me, freezing me in place. Anyone moves, and I'll paint the walls with his brains. Marcus pulled Luca against his chest, the barrel inches from the boy's head. He was never mine. But he's the only thing in this room you both care about. So here's how this ends. I walk out with my wife and son. Ghost takes the blame. Ghost dies a traitor. Let him go, I said, my voice breaking. Take me instead. I'll confess. I'll sign anything. Too late. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Say goodbye, little Luca. Your real daddy wants to watch you die. Daddy. Luca's small voice cut through the chaos. He stared up at Marcus, tears dripping off his chin. You're scaring me. Marcus hesitated. A fraction of a second. A flicker of something human beneath the madness. Serafina threw herself at him, clawing at his arm. The gun discharged into the ceiling. Luca screamed. I tackled Marcus, my fists connecting with his face and ribs, 5 years of rage pouring out in a single moment. When it ended, Marcus lay broken on the floor. Alive. Barely. The cartel soldiers had their weapons drawn. Amos shouted orders. But all I could see was Luca. He was huddled in Serafina's arms, sobbing, his gray eyes squeezed shut. My son. The boy I'd never held, never protected. The last thing he'd seen was the man he called Daddy holding a gun to his head. I reached for him, my hands shaking. Luca. Stay away. He flinched, pressing his face into Serafina's shoulder. You hurt my daddy. Don't touch me. The words hit harder than Marcus's bullets ever had. Serafina met my eyes over our son's head, her face streaked with tears. Give him time, she whispered. Please, Dante. Give him time. The cartel cleared the room. Marcus was dragged away. The Vipers stared at their resurrected president with awe and fear. And I stood in the wreckage of my homecoming, watching my son sob in his mother's arms, and realized the war wasn't over. It had just begun. 3 days passed in a blur of interrogations and silence. The cartel took their justice swiftly. Marcus was handed over to federal authorities. The embezzlement charges alone would keep him buried for decades. The Vipers, shell-shocked and leaderless, looked to me for direction I wasn't ready to give. Amos handled the chaos while I sat in the cabin on the ridge, staring at the wall of photographs I'd assembled during my years of exile. Marcus's face was still there. I hadn't taken it down. But the photograph that haunted me most was the one I didn't have. Luca. My son. The boy who wouldn't look at me. Serafina came to the cabin on the 4th morning. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a hasty knot, but her voice was steady. He's asking questions. About you. About Marcus. I don't know what to tell him. The truth. He's 4 years old, Dante. The truth is too big for him. She was right. How do you explain to a child that the man who tucked him in every night was a murderer? That the stranger who appeared from nowhere was his real father? That his entire life had been built on a lie? Can I see him? He's scared of you. After the clubhouse, she stopped, her voice catching. He saw you hurt Marcus. He doesn't understand why. I know. I pressed my palms flat against the table. But I can't fix this from a distance. Let me try. Please. She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Tomorrow. The garden. He feels safe there. Trattino, trattino. The garden was where I'd first touched my son, lifting him from the dirt after a fall. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now I sat on the stone bench by the roses, my hands empty, my heart hammering, waiting. Luca came with Serafina, his small hand gripping hers. He stopped when he saw me, his gray eyes, my eyes, widening with wariness. He didn't run. That was something. "Hi, Luca," I said quietly. He didn't answer. He pressed closer to his mother's leg. Serafina knelt beside him. "Remember what we talked about? This is Dante. He's an old friend of Mommy's. He wants to get to know you." "The man who hurt Daddy," Luca whispered. My chest cracked open. "I'm sorry you saw that. I'm sorry you were scared. Sometimes grown-ups do things that are hard to understand." "Are you a bad guy?" "No." I leaned forward, keeping my voice soft. "I'm not a bad guy. I'm just someone who cares about you and your mom. I'd never hurt you, Luca. Never." He studied me with the intense seriousness only children possess. "Why do you have my eyes?" Serafina inhaled sharply. I met her gaze over his head, a silent question. She nodded, barely. "Because I'm your father," I said. "Your real father. I've been gone for a long time, but I'm back now. And I'd like to be part of your life, if you'll let me." Luca was silent. The garden held its breath. Then he reached up and touched his own face, just below his eye. "My eyes are like yours." "Yes." "Marcus said I got them from nobody." Marcus was wrong. He considered this. 4 years old, and already carrying the weight of a truth too heavy for most adults. Then he did something that shattered me completely. He stepped forward, away from his mother, and held out his hand. "I found a frog yesterday. His name is Pickles. Do you want to see him?" I couldn't speak. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. He took my hand, his small fingers barely wrapping around 2 of mine, and pulled me toward the pond at the edge of the garden. Serafina watched us go, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. At the pond, Luca pointed to a fat green frog sitting on a lily pad. "There. That's Pickles. He's my best friend. He's a very handsome frog. He doesn't have a daddy either. But I told him it's okay. Mommies are enough." I knelt beside him, my voice rough. "Mommies are amazing. But if you ever want a daddy too, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." Luca looked at me for a long moment. Then he leaned against my shoulder, just slightly, his small body warm and solid. "Okay," he said. "You can stay." I wrapped my arm around him, gentle and careful, and watched the frog hop off its lily pad into the water. The ripples spread outward, touching everything, changing everything. Serafina joined us after a few minutes, settling on the grass beside me. She didn't speak. She just took my other hand, her fingers lacing through mine, and together we watched our son chase dragonflies through the golden afternoon light. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a beginning, fragile and new and terrifyingly hopeful. The ghost had finally come home. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. Harder than crawling through the desert with 2 bullet holes in my chest. Harder than the surgeries, the infections, the years of learning to walk again while the world believed I was rotting in an unmarked grave. None of that compared to the excruciating patience of winning back my son. I didn't push. I showed up every day. Morning coffee on the porch while Luca played in the garden, afternoons helping Serafina with chores, evenings reading stories that Luca tolerated but never asked for. He called me Dante. Never Dad. Never Daddy. I took what he gave and didn't demand more. The club was another battle entirely. The Vipers were fractured, some loyal to Marcus's memory, most horrified by the truth, all of them unsure what to do with a resurrected president. I called a meeting in the Great Hall, the same room where Marcus had held a gun to my son's head. I'm not here to take over, I said, addressing the assembled members. The vipers belong to themselves. I'm here to offer a choice. Those who want to stay and rebuild, legitimately, cleanly, you have a place. Those who can't stomach following a dead man, leave now, no repercussions. A handful walked out. Most stayed. Amos stood at my side, his one good eye gleaming with something that looked like pride. We've got work to do, he said. Then let's get started. Trattino, trattino. Spring melted into summer. The compound transformed. New paint, new policies, new prospects who'd never heard the name Marcus Hale. The cartel deal was restructured under legitimate terms. Serafina started tending the garden again, really tending it, her hands in the soil without the hollow look she'd worn for years. And Luca, my son, began to heal. It happened in small moments. A question about motorcycles. A shared laugh over Pickles the frog escaping his terrarium. The first time he fell asleep against my shoulder during a movie. I memorized every one, hoarding them like precious stones. One evening in late July, he found me in the garage, tuning up my bike. He stood in the doorway, clutching a toy motorcycle, his gray eyes serious. "Did you really die?" he asked. I set down my wrench. I almost died. But I didn't. I fought hard to come back. Why? Because I wanted to meet you. He considered this. Marcus said you were a bad man. Marcus said a lot of things that weren't true. He hurt you? He tried. Iknel to his level. But I'm still here. And I'm never leaving again. That's a promise. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he held out his toy motorcycle. Can I have a real one someday? Absolutely not. Your mother would kill me. He giggled, a real giggle, bright and unexpected. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Maybe a bicycle first, I said. We can work up to it. Okay. He tucked the toy under his arm. Dante? Yeah, buddy. Mommy smiles more now. Since you came back. My throat closed. I'm glad. He nodded once, decisively, and ran back toward the house. I stayed on the garage floor, surrounded by oil stains and engine parts, and let the tears come. Serafina found me there an hour later. She didn't ask why my eyes were red. She just sat beside me on the concrete, her shoulder pressed against mine. He's starting to trust you, she said quietly. It's terrifying. I know. She took my hand. But you're doing it right. You're patient. You're gentle. You're everything I always knew you could be. I wasted 5 years. You survived 5 years. There's a difference. She turned to face me. I've been thinking about what happens next. The club is stable. Luca is healing. And she paused. I want to start over. With you. Officially. Are you proposing to me? Someone has to. Her smile was watery but real. You took too long the first time. I kissed her, slow and deep and full of all the years we'd lost. When we broke apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. Is that a yes? She whispered. That's a yes. 1,000 times yes. The wedding was small. Luca served as ring-bearer, carrying the rings on a pillow. He decorated himself with drawings of frogs and motorcycles. Amos stood as best man. The vipers lined the back rows, leather cuts exchanged for jackets. Mrs. Hart cried into her handkerchief. And when the chaplain pronounced us husband and wife, again, for real this time, Luca tugged on my sleeve. Does this mean I can call you Daddy now? I lifted him into my arms, holding him between us. Only if you want to. He thought about it. Then he wrapped his small arms around my neck. Okay, he said. Daddy. The ghost had finally come home. 1 year later. The Viper's clubhouse looked nothing like the fortress I'd once ruled. The barbed wire was gone. The iron gates stood open during daylight hours. The main hall that had once hosted cartel negotiations now held family dinners every Sunday, long tables crowded with members and their wives and children. Luca had learned to ride his bicycle in the parking lot, wobbling between rows of motorcycles with training wheels squeaking. Amos said I'd gone soft. He meant it as a compliment. I was in the garage with Luca on a Saturday afternoon, teaching him to change the oil on my bike, when Serafina appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, a letter clutched in her hand. Marcus is appealing his sentence. The wrench slipped from my grip. On what grounds? His lawyer claims the cartel testimony was coerced. They're requesting a retrial. She handed me the letter. The court date is set for next month. If he wins, he won't. Dante, if he gets out, he won't. I crossed the garage and pulled her into my arms. The evidence is ironclad. Vargas testified willingly. The embezzlement records are unassailable. This is a desperate move from a desperate man. But even as I said the words, cold unease coiled in my stomach. Marcus had spent a year in prison with nothing to do but nurse his hatred. He'd had time to plan, to scheme, to find the cracks in our armor. Is he going to hurt us again? Luca's small voice came from behind me. He was standing by the motorcycle, his hands covered in oil, his gray eyes wide with fear. I knelt beside him. No, he's never going to hurt anyone again. I promise. You said promises are forever. They are. I pulled him into a hug, his small body trembling against mine. I'm not going anywhere. Neither is your mom. Marcus is in prison, and he's staying there. But that night, after Luca was asleep and Serafina had gone to bed, I sat alone in the garage with my father's old shotgun across my knees. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I watched the darkness and listened to the wind and waited for a threat that might never come. The next morning, Amos arrived with news. Marcus has been talking from his cell. He's been reaching out to old contacts, trying to arrange something from the inside. He handed me a folder. One of them flipped. Gave us everything. I scanned the documents. Names. Dates. A plan to discredit Vargas, bribe a juror, and have Serafina and Luca removed before the retrial. My blood ran cold. He's targeting my family. He's targeting everything. Amos's jaw was tight. But we've got the intel now. We can stop it. How? The witness who flipped will testify. The bribery attempt will be exposed. Marcus's appeal will collapse, and he'll face additional charges. He'll never see daylight again. He paused. But you'll need to testify. Again. In person. With your family watching. I thought about Luca, who'd just started calling me Daddy. I thought about Serafina, who'd finally stopped looking over her shoulder. I thought about dragging them back into a courtroom, forcing them to relive the nightmare. I'll do it, I said. But I'm doing it alone. They've been through enough. They're stronger than you think. I know. That's what terrifies me. Trattino. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified for 2 of them, recounting every detail of the embezzlement, the murder attempt, the night in the clubhouse. Marcus sat across the courtroom, his cold eyes never leaving my face. He looked older, smaller, but the hatred in his gaze was undiminished. On the 3rd day, Serafina insisted on testifying. He tried to stop her. She ignored me. He doesn't get to silence me, she said, her chin lifted. Not anymore. She walked into that courtroom like a queen, her voice steady as she described the years of fear and manipulation. She spoke about Luca, about the night Marcus held a gun to his head, about the lies that had stolen 5 years from all of us. When she finished, half the jury was in tears. The verdict came back in 2 hours. Appeal denied. Additional charges filed. Marcus Hale would spend the rest of his life in maximum security, no possibility of parole. I waited for him outside the courthouse. Not to speak. I had nothing left to say. Just to watch the marshals load him into the transport van. As they passed, his eyes found mine through the window. "This isn't over," he mouthed. I smiled. "Yes, it is." The van drove away. I stood on the courthouse steps, the autumn sun warm on my face, and felt something I'd forgotten how to recognize. Peace. Serafina took my hand. Luca wrapped his arms around my leg. We walked to the car together, a family, finally whole, finally safe. The ghost had stopped haunting the past. He was too busy living the future. 3 years later. The desert stretched endlessly beyond the windshield, the same desert where I'd crawled through sand and blood while the vultures circled overhead. I hadn't been back since that night. I'd never planned to return. But Luca had asked. He was 7 now, all long legs and endless questions, his gray eyes sharp and curious. He'd found an old newspaper clipping in Amos's cabin, a story about the biker president who'd been left for dead and rose again. He'd read it 4 times before bringing it to me. "Is this true?" he'd asked, pointing to the headline. "Did you really crawl out of the desert with 2 bullets in you?" "It's true. I want to see it. The place where it happened." Serafina had been against it. "Too many ghosts," she'd said. But I understood. Luca wasn't just curious. He was trying to piece together the man I'd been before I became his father. The man who'd survived. So we drove. Just the 2 of us, a father and son, an old pickup truck, and miles of empty highway. I stopped at a pull-off near the spot where Marcus had left me. The terrain looked different now. Softer, somehow. The blood was long gone, washed away by years of rain. "This is it?" Luca asked, climbing out of the truck. "This is it." He stood at the edge of the road, staring at the sand and scrub brush. His small shoulders were tense. "What did you think about when you were crawling?" "The truth?" "Yeah." "I thought about your mom. Her face. Her voice. I thought about all the things I'd never gotten to say to her. And I thought about the future, one I'd never get to have." I knelt beside him. "I didn't know about you yet. If I had, I'd have crawled twice as fast." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a toy motorcycle, the same one he'd shown me in the garage 3 years ago. "I brought this. I thought maybe we could leave it here, so the desert knows you came back." My throat closed. I took the toy and set it gently on the sand, weighing it down with a small stone. "Good idea, Dad." "Yeah, buddy. I'm glad you didn't die." I pulled him against my side, my arm wrapped around his thin shoulders. "Me too." We stood there as the sun sank toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. The ghosts were still there, the pain, the betrayal, the years of loss, but they felt smaller now. Quieter. Like they'd finally been laid to rest. Trattino, trattino. We returned home to find the compound transformed. The Vipers had opened a community center in the old clubhouse, offering after-school programs and job training for kids who'd grown up like I had, hungry, angry, looking for a family in all the wrong places. Serafina ran the literacy program. I taught motorcycle repair. Amos, now retired, spent his days fishing and spoiling Luca rotten. He'd taught him to play poker, which Serafina had opinions about. On a warm evening in late summer, Serafina found me on the porch, watching Luca chase fireflies with the same net he'd used when he was 4. She settled into the chair beside me, her hand finding mine. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Just thinking about how close I came to losing all of this. The desert, Marcus, the appeal. Any one of those things could have ended differently. I turned to face her. But they didn't. I'm here. You're here. Luca's here. And I still wake up every morning afraid it's a dream. It's not a dream. She squeezed my hand. You built this, Dante. You clawed your way back from nothing. You won back your son. You rebuilt a club that actually helps people. That's not luck. That's you. I had help. You had me. And Amos. And 1,000 small choices that led here. She leaned her head against my shoulder. But mostly you had yourself. The man who refused to die. Luca's laughter rang across the yard as he caught a firefly, cupping it gently in his palms. He ran toward us, his face glowing with triumph. Dad, Mom, look. He opened his hands, and the firefly blinked at us, a tiny beacon in the twilight. Then it spread its wings and lifted into the air, joining the hundreds of others dancing over the grass. Did you see it? Luca asked breathlessly. It glowed. I saw it, I said. That was amazing. Can we catch more tomorrow? As many as you want. He grinned and ran back into the yard, his net trailing behind him. Serafina laughed, and the sound was so bright, so free, that it still caught me off guard. The woman I'd come back to had been hollowed out by fear and grief. The woman beside me now was whole. I love you, I said. I know. She kissed me, soft and slow. I love you too. The fireflies danced. The mountains stood silent. And somewhere in the desert, a toy motorcycle marked the spot where one life ended and another began. The ghost was gone. Only the man remained. 15 years later, the Iron Viper's compound had become something no one could have predicted. The community center now spanned 3 buildings. The after-school program served 200 kids. The motorcycle repair shop doubled as a vocational school, teaching trades to teenagers who'd been written off by everyone else. On any given day, the parking lot was full of bicycles and skateboards, the roar of motorcycles replaced by the chaos of children. I was 63 years old. My hair had gone fully silver. My scars had faded to pale lines. I still rode, but only on Sundays, and only with Luca beside me on his own bike, a custom build we'd put together in the garage when he was 16. He was 22 now. 6 feet tall. My eyes. His mother's smile. He'd just graduated from college with a degree in social work, and he'd already applied for a position at the community center. Full circle, Amos liked to say. Full damn circle. You're brooding again, Serafina said, joining me on the porch. Her hair was streaked with gray, her hands calloused from years of gardening. She was still the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I'm reflecting. There's a difference. Reflecting on what? How it all turned out. I took her hand. When I crawled out of that desert, I had one goal: revenge. I wanted to destroy Marcus. I wanted to burn everything he'd built. I wanted blood. And instead, I got this. A home. A family. A son who's going to change the world. I looked at her. You saved me, Sarah. You could have turned me away. You could have chosen safety. But you gave me a chance. You gave yourself a chance. She squeezed my fingers. I just reminded you who you were. The screen door banged open. Luca stepped onto the porch, an envelope in his hand and a grin on his face. Got the job. At the center? Program director. I start next month. He handed me the envelope. I wanted you to be the first to know. Well, you and Mom. I pulled him into a hug, my throat tight. I'm proud of you. Dad. I mean it. Everything I built, it's just bricks. You're the legacy. You're the point of all of it. He pulled back, his gray eyes, my eyes, a little wet. I had a good example. Your mom, maybe. I was a disaster. You were a disaster who came back. He grinned. That's the part that matters. Amos hobbled up the porch steps, his cane thumping on the wood. He was 90 now, his one good eye still sharp, his tongue sharper. Are we having a family moment? Without me? You were taking a nap, Serafina said. I don't nap. I rest my eyes. He settled into his usual chair. So, the boy got the job. I heard. News travels fast. Small compound. He nodded at Luca. You'll do good. Don't screw it up. I'll try not to, Amos. See that you don't. Your father built all this from nothing. Twice. Respect the legacy. The word hung in the air. Legacy. For so long, I'd thought of mine as blood and bullets. Now it was brick and mortar, children and futures, a second chance that had rippled outward in ways I'd never imagined. That evening, we gathered in the great hall for Sunday dinner, a tradition that had grown from a handful of vipers to 100 people. Families. Students. Old members and new. Luca sat at the head of the table, leading a discussion about the fall programs. Serafina held court with the literacy volunteers. Amos told war stories to a group of wide-eyed teenagers. And I sat back and watched. The ghost who'd crawled out of the desert. The man who'd wanted nothing but revenge. The father who'd learned that patience was stronger than fury. Later, when the hall had emptied and the dishes were done, I walked alone to the garage. My old bike was still there, the one I'd rebuilt after Marcus's betrayal.
Beside it sat Luca S. bike.
And beside that, a small toy motorcycle rescued from the desert years ago, now sitting on a shelf. I picked it up. The plastic was faded, the wheels worn smooth. A reminder of the day Luca had asked to see the place where I'd almost died. The day he'd left this toy behind so the desert would know I'd come back. Still here, I said quietly. Still standing. The door creaked. Serafina stepped inside, her shawl pulled tight against the evening chill. I thought I'd find you here. Just saying good night. To the bikes? To the past. I set the toy back on the shelf. I spent so many years chasing it. Fighting it. Trying to rewrite it. But the past isn't the enemy. It's just the road that got us here. That's very philosophical for a retired biker. I'm full of surprises. She crossed the garage and wrapped her arms around my waist. You are. You always have been. She tilted her face up. Are you happy, Dante? I looked at the shelves lined with memories, photographs of Luca, a dried rose from our second wedding, the toy motorcycle from the desert. I looked at the woman in my arms, the lines around her eyes, the smile that had saved my life. I'm not just happy, I said. I'm home. She kissed me, and the garage door creaked again. Luca's voice called out, Dad, Mom. Amos fell asleep in the rocking chair and we can't move him. Duty calls, Serafina said. Let the old man sleep. He's earned it. We walked out together, hand in hand, into the warm night air. The compound glowed with lights from a dozen windows. Laughter echoed from the great hall. Somewhere, a motorcycle engine rumbled to life, a prospect, probably, heading home after a long day. I'd been left for dead in the desert. I'd come back for revenge. I'd stayed for love. And now, surrounded by family and friends and a future I'd never dared to imagine, I realized the truth that had been waiting for me all along. The ghost was gone. The man was free. The end.